We are here to talk about work. It's changed rather a lot in the thousands of years since the Bible was written. So the question is, does the Bible have anything to say about this topic? And is it relevant for today's world? As always, we are recorded in front of a live audience from a pub in Birmingham. So welcome to Bible After Hours. I'm looking forward to this. We have two legends on the panel who are very dear to me. Steve is my mountain biking buddy. Hello, Steve.
Hi, good evening, morning, wherever you may be and whatever time it may be.
Indeed, for our international listeners. And Rick has a beautiful daughter who I decided to marry, which, makes him my father-in-law. Hello, Rick.
Quite right, too.
It's good to have you both along. So I'm Luke Holly, and I set up this podcast as I think the Bible is well worth a read, whether you're a Christian or not. But I am no expert on it, so I've created this podcast with a few mates who know more than me, so I can hang out with them in a pub and ask lots of questions. As we are looking at the topic of work, I thought I'd ask two people who I look up to for their character and their careers. They're towards the end of their career or retired, so they've done the miles. They've travelled the full journey and picking up some letters after their names along the way even. They won't like me saying this, but we have an OBE and a British Empire medal holders on the panel tonight, so we are in esteemed company. Before we crack on with the podcast, if you haven't checked out any of our others, then I'd encourage you to subscribe to, we have our new YouTube channel, or any of the other podcast platforms we're on, and have a listen to some of our great sessions and give us a positive rating while you're there too. Our last one was on sin, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Pete and Narek took us on a tour de force. I enjoyed sin, yes, absolutely. We covered lots of questions like, can we sin in our sleep, and what is sin? And I kept on getting punched in the face, which was interesting. So put that on your list if you haven't listened to it already. For those listening in Birmingham, get yourself over here for the next one and experience it live. Dates and topics can be found in our new website, BibleAfterHours.com, or on our socials. Yes, Johnny, I have been vibe coding my way into a website.
It sounds impressive.
Yes.
I still don't know what it is.
Yeah. Well, it's basically you tell AI to do the website. It does something which is not actually what you want. And then you spend hours arguing with it as to actually make it do what you want it to do, and then end up just doing it yourself.
That sounds like a sort of accurate description of AI in general. Really.
I think that's what vibe coding is. Maybe I've been getting it wrong somewhere along the way. But nonetheless, we are now live with BibleAfterHours.com, which is very exciting. Our next recording will be in May, where we have our first book launch from a local author, Ruth Page. The book is called Too Busy to Stop, and we'll be looking at what the Bible says on work-life balance, identity, and so much more. So if you can get here, you can also have the chance to meet Ruth and ask more questions when the recording stops. Maybe she'll sign books, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But now, back to tonight and the topic of work. In this session, we intend to take a look at what the Bible says about work in the first half, and then in the second half, we'll explore more of the panel's experiences and lessons learned from lives well lived. Talking of hard work, we have our resident hard-working sound engineer, Johnny, back in the dictionary corner, doing the usual fact-checking and extra questions. Welcome back, Johnny.
Thank you very much.
As always, there's 3 house rules we ask everyone to keep when listening to our podcast. So, Johnny, can you run through them for me?
I certainly can. So, rule 1, know yourself. Appreciate that we all come with preconceptions, backgrounds and hang-ups, so be aware of that, and if possible, try and come with an open mind. Number 2, none of us know it all, so hopefully we can all learn together. And finally, don't shoot the messenger. Let's be kind and have fun.
Great. Is everyone happy with the rules of the game? Yes. Great. All right, let's play them. So, Johnny, what's your take on work? I'm going to pose to you the question. So, if you won the lottery, which I'm not sure if you play or not, but if you did, and you won it, would you carry on working or volunteering or something, or would you just set yourself up on a beach? What would you do?
I think I would have to carry on.
You've
You've got to fill your time with something.
Yeah.
If you've got the time and the money to do something worthwhile, then you might as well
Do
it.
The beach
really.
is not
You've got to give
attracting
something
you.
back. Not really, no. I don't like the heat.
Fair enough. Yeah, this is true. I should have forgot that. I shouldn't have said the beach. Maybe something else would have been better. The Highlands of Scotland, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, it'd be up for that. Well, that's the question that we asked the audience as to whether or not they would be up for taking a rest on the beach for the rest of their lives, or whether or not they would do it. We didn't ask if they actually took the lottery or not, so that's just an assumption that we were all gambling away here. So what was the results of the question? If they won the lottery, would they work or volunteer, or just not at all ever again?
It was a resounding yes all round. Everybody said they would carry on working.
Carry on working or volunteering. Oh well, I wasn't expecting that, Johnny. If I'm honest, I thought a few people might just be like, "I'm quite happy."
You thought we'd have some lazy people somewhere.
Put my feet up and.
Yeah.
But I guess if the people have managed to get here, they're not that lazy in the
true.
first place. So maybe it's
Good
the
point.
ones that
Self-selected.
didn't come that would just be quite happy chilling out. Okay. Well, I would like to welcome both our panelists to Bible After Hours. We've said hello to them already, but hello, panelists.
Hello.
Good to see you. So let's do some proper introductions. So let's, Rick, as you are my father-in-law and the eldest, we'll start with you. So, Rick, could you give us a brief summary of like your career and what you're up to now? I know you are retired, so let's keep it kind of brief because I know it's long and interesting.
Long and interesting.
Give us a
for
potted
some.
history.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I left school at 18 and I went into my first job and I stayed with them, that particular organisation, which was Customs and Excise, stroke HMRC, for over 40 years. And I fancied doing it because I fancied turning people's bags out at Heathrow Airport.
Oh, yeah?
But I tell
Is
you
that
what.
what you ended up doing?
No, I never did it.
Oh.
I just did lots of other things and
Yeah.
appeared on various... did a bit of court work, did a bit of fraud work, went out on VAT inspections. But the changing thing in my life was, well, when I became a Christian, changed how I approach work.
Right.
I became less judgmental and probably a lot less hostile.
Okay, well, that's good. I mean, usually people associate Christianity and Christians with judgment and being
Well,
judged,
yeah,
so I'm
no,
glad to hear it went the other way
it
direction.
went the other way. But I had a great couple of loans outside the department with an organisation called Business in the Community. And I finished my career in the civil service in 2016. But for the last 18 months, I worked, the title is long, Community Engagement Manager for the Civil Service in the South West and Wales. One of those you have to take a deep breath to do.
Well done for remembering it.
Well, you know, it was good fun, and sort of meeting lots of different people, getting civil servants to volunteer, and make a difference.
And you have the OBE for all of this. Is that right?
I got the OBE for delivering a project that cost a few million to implement, and it included the recruitment of about 200 people, 200 tax inspectors, and I think in the first year of them working, they raised £300 million additional tax revenue. So yeah, it was worthwhile.
Yeah.
But the main reason, because lots of people in the civil service do that, was because I was actively involved in the community. So I was mentoring prisoners in a local prison,
Okay.
and delivering some training to homeless people to get into work.
Cool.
So.
And now you're retired and do nothing.
No, because I carried on working after I retired from the civil service as a volunteer manager in Staffordshire, and I learnt a lot more about the volunteer sector, and so I just get involved and do things, and I think the latest thing that I do with Luke as well, we do guerrilla planting.
Guerrilla gardening, yeah, absolutely.
Bit of guerrilla gardening on the local estate, and litter picking. And
You
we
keep
just
yourself
love litter
busy
picking.
one way
Just
or
keeping
another.
busy, getting involved in schools, listening to kids read. Yeah, it's just important. So, I spend a lot of hours volunteering.
Well, thank
I
you
love
for
it.
coming along tonight.
Brilliant.
Looking forward to hearing your wisdom in this space. And Steve, welcome.
Thank you.
So, other than going on a mountain bike with me ever so often, what keeps you busy?
Well, I suppose work-wise, because that's the topic tonight, what keeps me busy, somehow I've ended up as the director at Birmingham City Council responsible for homelessness and a housing need and all of that sort of package, really. So rough sleeping on the streets, people in hostels, temporary accommodation, all the people on the housing register wanting social housing in the city, and all the kind of the stuff that goes around that in terms of what that need looks like, and in the sense that the challenges that come with that as well. So I've ended up in that space. It's not necessarily been that's where I want to be and that's the job I want at the end of this career path.
You mean you didn't aspire in your early teens to do this particular role?
Not specifically. I think later on I'll get a chance to sort of say where it all began.
Yeah.
But there has been a sense in which now, I think 36 years, that I have been working in homelessness and housing in that sort of space. So there's been some consistency there. I've worked in night shelters and street outreach. I've managed hostels. I've developed new housing schemes. I've worked for the regional kind of combined authority and all sorts of things across the career. And always, I guess, trying to be where I could have the best impact and help the most people, really. And so I've ended up in the biggest local authority in Europe with some of the biggest housing and homelessness challenges that we've got.
I gotta say, I imagine on a day-to-day, you're the guy who has to deal with a lot of problems, and probably nobody particularly likes the end result. Like, if you have to get people into housing, they probably don't like the housing. There's probably not enough housing to go around. People don't like the people that are going in the housing, and all of those and many more, I'm sure.
It was a fair summary of my day-to-day, really, I think. But yes, and therefore you have to look beyond the fact that, absolutely, my job is to deal with things that are difficult and people who are in difficult situations and everything else like that. And therefore I have to be able to see there's a bigger picture to this whole thing that makes it all valuable to be in that work.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, that's the sort of stuff we're going to be unpacking tonight. So again, thank you for coming along to share your wisdom to this. So lots of stuff, lots of experiences that we have on the panel. So I think, but at first, we're going to sort of break it into two sections today. I think the first bit is going to be, we'll go through sort of really what does the Bible say about work in general. What's the sort of ethos there, and then in the second half we might spend a little bit more time exploring how that learning and that sort of those Bible teachings have shaped Rick and Steve's career. But the first bit, it'll be really good, Steve, to get your thoughts on, right from the beginning, starting off in the Bible. What does it say about work? Is it a good thing, a bad thing? Is it something we should be doing, or should we all be just hanging out on a beach? What does the Bible say in principle about the topic?
It's a good place to start, isn't it, Luke? And as you said, you said the words in the beginning in the Bible, and literally I think that's a good place to start. So many people might have tried to read the whole Bible, and at least they got this far. So Genesis 1:1, first verse of the Bible, right. It says literally, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now, maybe you don't look at that and think, oh, that's about work, but let's break that down a little bit. So we've got God and we've got creation, and there is God working. And so in the first verse of the Bible, we've got an illustration of work, and I think that's exciting. And it goes on to verse 2. Now the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. There's a sense in which a creative God was hovering there in the beginning over stuff that was formless, over stuff that was without management, let's say, without separation, without space, without creativity, without colour, without all of those things. And then gradually, as you read that entry into the Bible in Genesis 1, you see God over each of those 6 days being creative, the plants, the sea life, the animals, and then we get to the human beings as well, who are made in God's image. And so you've got a creative God creating marvelous and wonderful things, and then you've got God creating us in his image. And part of that's got to be that actually we're creative beings who are made to do things rather than just to be things. And that's exciting. And we carry on through the Bible seeing all sorts of examples where human beings, we have grown in those skills and capacity in all sorts of exciting ways. And so absolutely work is built in there. And I suppose the other little sideline to recognise there is also rest is built in there. So while tonight we're concentrating on the doing bits, and God did 6 days of the doing bit, then he had a day of rest, the Sabbath, the seventh day, and he rested. And it's often said that, if God needs a rest, then so do we. Well, but there's also a sense in which the rest is only really good and valuable because of the other days that have gone on as well. So we're created in the image of God to do the same stuff that God did, and we've got it right there at the beginning of the Bible.
It's a good promo for our next next one, which is all about rest. So we will definitely want to cover that off as well. So we're made in God's image. The story of the creation story sort of sets that context about who we are. And who God is in all this relationship. So we're saying if God is a creator God, we're made to create, we're made to do things and develop that. Right? Okay, that all makes sense. And I guess that sounds quite a pleasurable process. Work isn't necessarily always pleasurable. At least it doesn't feel to me like it is most of the time, maybe, but not all the time, in case my boss is listening to this. But is it always meant to be pleasurable? Is that the ideal, or is that
it's a good question, isn't it? Because the picture we get at the beginning of the Bible, and people have heard about the Garden of Eden, a place of good stuff, and Adam and Eve are there, and they get to be part of God's creation. They get to look after the animals. They get to tend the plants. They have this wonderful space to be in. And so, and that includes working. It includes being creative. It includes naming. It includes managing things and growing things and developing things. And so there was a fantastic picture of what God created for them. And in essence, God created for us. But then, as we've spoken about at other weeks of the podcast, there's that thing called the fall. And by that we mean at the point where people made decisions to rebel against God. And in the Adam and Eve story, it's about choosing to eat of the tree of the forbidden fruit. But that's a symbol, a sign of saying, actually, God, we don't want to do it in your way. We're going to do it in our way. And God says, well, that has consequences. And the story of Adam and Eve is that actually one of the consequences is actually Adam, it's going to be hard work now. The ground which was easy to tender and easy to get your crops from and enjoy, now it's going to be hard labor. And that's a consequence of your decision to kind of break the rules of Eden and the perfect place that God created. And so we see that, don't we, in work? We see that now. There are things that are great about work, and it's what we're created for, and that's harking back to the good days of Eden. But there's also things that are really hard work and suck, and that's the stuff that is actually part of where things broke down in that relationship with God, and we have to toil is one of the words that it describes as. And so there's a broken relationship there as well.
Yeah. Okay. That certainly sort of reflects, I think, I'm sure, lots of experiences that people have about labour. So we're saying work is in principle a good thing, but maybe it's not in its fullness right now the way that we would like it to be. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, I guess one of the other questions in my mind is, is that a consistent sort of story across the whole of the Bible? Rick, I'd be interested to hear from you. If what's your take? Later on in the Bible with Jesus and the disciples, obviously as Christians we take a lot of our teachings from the New Testament. So what does it say in the New Testament? What do the disciples do? Are they all just chilling out?
They weren't loafers.
They weren't loafers. No. So
they all worked.
Yeah.
You can look at what Jesus did. That he was a serious craftsman.
Yep.
Some say a carpenter, but he was a builder, a really talented guy.
Yep.
There's no doubt that the other professions they had, they were fishermen, they were tax collectors. So they all worked. Paul, a disciple later on in the Bible, was a tent maker. Mm-hmm. Really significant positions that they held, and they recognized that's what they needed to do.
Did
So,
they?
yeah.
Do you reckon they carried on earning money as they went through into becoming disciples, or do you reckon they just stopped it from day one and that was it? They moved into being a Christian and therefore didn't work after that. How did that look like?
I think they carried on working when they could. Paul certainly did as a tent maker, because he moved around and he was part of the union of tent makers across the Roman Empire.
Who knew there was such a thing?
Well, there were had big unions in those days.
Maybe, yeah. I wonder if you had a card or something for that.
But if you're a fisherman, when Jesus was crucified and they all scattered, they actually went back to the Sea of Galilee and they became fishermen again. Mm-hmm. So they carried on doing as much as they could, and they were supported.
Mm-hmm. I mean, these are jobs that I guess nowadays we wouldn't necessarily class as particularly worthy jobs. Like they're not healing people or making people better or something. They're just normal jobs in communities.
Just practical jobs.
Yeah, being part of that community, supporting the community. Did Jesus work all the time, or was he supported? You know, he must, because he was going around a lot, presumably. So, presumably not able to get to his tools quite as regularly as he might.
No,
would
probably
want to.
wasn't. But I think it's fair to say that whilst he was doing his ministry time, which was sort of 3 years, he was supported by people. He was sponsored, supported. And I know, Steve, you looked this up, didn't you, as to who?
I did, and it's one of those things that you forget. You kind of almost think, it only counts to be working if you're kind of labouring with your hands and producing something. And from what we can tell, Jesus certainly did that. But there was also that ministry period, as you're just talking about, and I think it's Luke chapter 8, and it talks about, actually, it was a group of women that supported the ministry. You've got all these guys out there fishing and everything else like that, but it talks about Mary Magdalene and Susanna and Joanna, and they're the ones that actually, in a sense, are enabling the ministry. And it wouldn't be just him. It was the crowd of disciples and everybody else. How are they going to maintain that when they're actually haven't got the time to be able to doing the fishing at the same time consistently? And so, absolutely, there was support for that ministry. And so, in a sense, it gives you that sense of actually there are all sorts of things, all sorts of jobs that are worth your pay. And and Jesus being an itinerant preacher, he was worth his pay.
Okay. Something I'd never really thought of before. I guess in my head, Jesus, he feeds the 5,000, right? So he turns a couple of loaves of bread and fish and feeds everybody. So maybe just assuming that he could just produce food whenever and wherever he wanted, but there was actually people behind him sponsoring him in some form.
He should have had a wine business, shouldn't he? Really,
well,
also into wine, he could have made a fortune in that.
Yeah.
But no, it feels like. Absolutely, there are peaks of miracles, but absolutely, he was part of that community, he was part of that economy. There was a point where he had to pay some taxes, and yes, the coin came out of the fish's mouth at that moment. So there's miracles, but there's some also day-to-day labour, earning a keep, and having support as well.
Okay, yeah. The story of the coin coming out of the fish, I think, is one for maybe we can try and replicate that again for our own tax purposes.
That's
maybe.
an idea.
No, we'd tax the fish as well. So we wouldn't get away with that.
Says the
sorry,
tax man.
I forget we have the tax man panel. So Christians, or at least the disciples' works. I'd be interested, Rick, to know. I think you've done a little bit of research about what the early Christian church did. So presumably this is something they wrestled with. Should they be working, or should they just be out there preaching all the time? I guess they probably assumed the end of the world was coming relatively quickly. So should they all just down tools and move on to something else, or should they be doing stuff within the community? What was their take at it at the time?
Well, the very early church, yes, did think Jesus was coming back next week, or very quickly. But as time sort of settled down, the church became more established, and they set out. If you're going to work, well, which you should do, you can only work in certain types of professions. And
they were only one.
They laid it out. You've got to have a few rules, haven't you?
That just doesn't sound like the church I know.
No, that's one. So there's a nice one a nice sort of thing that's called the Apostolic Tradition from the 3rd and 4th century, and it lays out some nice simple roles that you should not be doing. So I'll read them to you because I think it's well worth remembering.
How did they know this is still a thing? Was this written down somewhere?
Yeah. This was written down 3rd and 4th century, so they've still got.
And it's survived since then, which is good. It's interesting to
They
hear.
photocopied it lots of times.
Okay, so what did they
Here
say?
we go. They will inquire concerning the works and occupations of those who are brought forward for instruction. If someone is a pimp who supports prostitutes, he shall cease or shall be rejected.
Good to know. I mean, I think we could probably still agree with that one.
Well,
That feels,
Well, yeah,
that feels like it's
possibly.
yeah. Maybe that was. It's funny they led with that one straight off the bat.
Yeah,
that was
I
the
know.
first one they were going to raise. As a,
But there are some other good ones as well.
Okay.
If someone is a sculptor or a painter,
right.
let them be taught not to make idols.
Yeah. Okay.
If someone is an
Alright.
actor
Okay.
or does shows in theatre, either he shall cease or he shall be rejected.
Oh dear.
Oh, they don't like actors.
They certainly don't. do they?
Oh, sorry,
If so-
actors.
and just to sort of show how well the church really thought about education, if someone teaches children worldly knowledge, it is good that he cease.
Oh dear. What a career.
But if he has no other trade, let him be permitted.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Fine.
Oh, gosh, yes. If someone is a military governor or the ruler of a city who wears the purple, he shall cease or he shall be rejected.
Right.
So pretty severe, yeah.
Yeah. So they had some pretty strong opinions about
They
what
certainly
is
did.
in and what is
Yeah.
out of favour.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder. Some of these potentially translate into modern day, but I think we've probably in the church's thinking moved on to some degree. So
Yeah, to some degree, I think. But you can go and look on various websites for various sort of churches' instructions on what you should work in and what you should not work in.
okay.
And a modern day thought is profiting from exploitation of people. Well, that seems pretty reasonable.
So we're saying that should be off
That-
the cards.
That should be off the cards.
Yeah, I mean that's quite a broad definition. Profiting of exploitation of people.
Yep.
Obviously, modern slavery we would all get behind as something we don't want. But I guess
Yes.
you could potentially broaden that out to quite a significant amount of
You
other
could.
activities. But yeah, no, okay, that
Yep.
yeah,
Encouraging a destructive or sinful lifestyle.
right. So again, the pimp might fall into that.
That's
category
probably one
still.
of those.
The
Yes.
drug dealer maybe as well, possibly. would go
Yeah,
into
drug
that one.
dealing. You know, Monday. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And until 300 years or so ago, being a banker
Oh.
Probably still possibly relevant.
might be. I won't go there, though. Because the charging of interest, usury, was
Right.
definitely something that the church condemned for 1,500 years of its existence.
Right. Yeah. I mean, as far as a historical point here, we probably most people in modern day life don't really realize this is a thing. I mean, what did you call it again?
Usury.
Usury. I mean, I assume the charging of interest. I mean, that as far as a financial system goes, is now a significant part of what we have
Yeah,
as a
it is.
capitalist
It is.
nation. But we're saying as of a couple of hundred years ago, that was not a thing. For
Well,
the
it
church.
happened, but it certainly wasn't something that a good Christian should do.
Okay, but we changed our opinion on that.
Well, we do, don't we? the world adapted to changing thoughts. Really.
Yeah, okay. Well, who says we don't learn and develop? Okay, so there's a few sort of highlights as to things that the church has developed on and in what roles we should or should potentially not be doing. What we also thought we could potentially go through is how does the Bible talk about work and how we should do work. So one of the things, one of the books in the Bible that really does go into this in quite a more detailed level is Proverbs. So Proverbs is in the Old Testament, and it's actually like as the name might suggest, it's a set of single lines or a couple of sentences of wisdom that has been collated together from the Jewish nation a couple of thousand years ago. So obviously nowadays it'd be interesting to see how these apply, but they do talk a lot about work. So to give us a brief flavour of that, I thought we could all choose one of our favourite proverbs about work to sort of list into. I'm saying one of our favourite proverbs is just specifically about the work sort of thing, and just to highlight the sort of the types of things that Proverbs says about work and how that would work. So, Steve, I'm going to go with you first. Do you want to give us your first proverb?
Thank you, Luke. As you say, there's lots to choose from, and what was going on in maybe Solomon's mind as these were all brought together? He was certainly cared about work. If you look at how much is in there, so I chose out of the list Proverbs 22 verse 29, and it goes like this: Do you see someone skilled in their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. And I suppose that, when we come on later, maybe we're going to start talking about actually why do we work and what's the reward in this. And it doesn't give you a guarantee there, be brilliant and you will automatically be, before kings in this case. But there is a sense in which Proverbs sets some principles out and says, actually, there's a value in being good at what you do. Be skilled in it. And actually, there's a likelihood, there's a higher probability that actually that'll get recognition, and that's a good thing. And that's maybe something that we're created for, to do something with skill, and maybe even the recognition elements of it as well.
Okay, yeah, good, I like that. Johnny, I'm going to go to you next. What is a proverb that you've selected for us?
I've gone for Proverbs 13:4, which is, "The soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing, while the soul of the diligent is richly supplied."
Nice. It's deep.
I went for that mostly because of the word sluggard. Which I think we should
Sure.
start a campaign to revive that.
Yeah, underused word.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I like it though. Well, the soul of the sluggard craves and gets nothing. Absolutely nothing. Work hard and you get more. Well, in fact, the one that I've chosen is going to be along those lines. So I've gone for Proverbs 10:4, which is, "Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth." So work hard, work diligently, and you'll make some money. Don't be lazy. And in fact, there's quite a lot of proverbs that are along the lines of don't be lazy. Rick, which one did you choose?
Well, as long as you abide by the earlier instructions I've said about this, you're okay. Because whoever is slack in his work is a brother to him who destroys. So that's Proverbs 18:9.
Okay. So, again, don't be slack in your work. No. Work hard. And in fact, if you're going to summarize a lot of these proverbs together, you'd probably go along the lines of work hard, work skillfully, maybe work honestly. But there's plenty of proverbs to go out there. So there's just a highlight. But by all means, if you're interested in this, dear listener, just Google proverbs of work and you'll come up with quite a few along the same sort of lines. One's about ants and sluggards and lots of things, right? Okay, so what should we actually spend our time working for? Steve, I'm going to go over to you for this one. If we're going to work hard, we're going to work skillfully. What should we particularly be aiming for here? Is there something else here that we should be doing?
Thanks, Leo. I'm going to even start with another proverb to even start
answering
that, because there's so much depth there. And so Proverbs 29:18 goes like this: "Where there is no revelation or vision, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom and instruction." And so I think maybe, certainly for me and my career, vision is an important thing to me in terms of actually, why do I do this? I haven't done the calculation recently, but if you sit down and work out how many minutes of your life you will spend working, if it's a 37.5-hour week and you do it over your 40-something years, what does that turn out to be? And actually, what's the purpose? And there's got to be something a little bit more than clocking in and clocking out. There's got to be a value to it. And so part of it is having that bigger vision. And part of that comes from what we've been talking about. We're created in God's image, and we're created to be bringing things into order, managing things, creating things, growing things, and all that sort of stuff. But actually, it's good to have that individual vision for who am I and what am I about, and what am I labouring in, and what am I trying to produce at the end of it. I suppose you get into sort of the words like legacy and so forth in terms of what's it all about. So, yeah, I think there's something about vision there, and I suppose for me that has kind of been rooted in actually, well, if I'm going to be working, what's the good I'm going to be doing? What's the difference I'm going to be making? Who's going to benefit from it? And so that's been the driving vision for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we had a podcast specifically on purpose, so people can check that out. But having that sort of what is your drive? What are you trying to achieve? And I guess obviously for everybody that purpose might look different, and the vision may look different. But having that as a thing. There was also we had another Bible verse, which I think, Johnny, I'm going to get you to read out, which I think also Steve, you wanted to look at a little bit. So this is Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4, and Philippians is one of those letters in the Bible in the New Testament, so writing to a church about this particular thing. So we're going to go for Philippians 2, verse 3 and 4.
Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others.
Okay, great. So a little bit more to that, Steve.
Yeah, and so if we go back to that idea of vision, what's my vision? To retire early and sit on the beach, which we started with this evening, or actually is it for something beyond me, beyond just the gratification and benefit of Steve? And so that Philippians, don't do the stuff out of selfish ambition. That's kind of vain conceit is how it's described, and that's an inward looking, and it only gets you so far. But instead, be humble and value others. Doesn't mean devalue yourself and make life miserable for yourself, but actually by giving, you do right by yourself and you do right by others, and that's where a vision comes into it. Actually, to see not just hey, I feel better or I feel richer and the results of my week's labour, actually, but who is better out of this, and what's the result for the wider kingdom, I suppose, in terms of a biblical sense. And if we pitch right back to that beginning where the fall took place, some of our vision is actually trying to get us into that better position to, I think, buy back or redeem our work. It can be toil, like we talked about for Adam, or it can actually be something that generates good and can be blessed by God, because it can see real fruit from it. And that's part of the vision that kind of really gets me out of bed and gets me to work each day.
Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, well, before we finish this half, I thought it's probably best, you talk about getting richer, it's probably best, I think, if people say, well, why should we work? Probably most people will put on top of that list is to make money. So I feel in that instance we should move to the tax man in the room for this particular topic. And so, Rick, is money the best thing to focus on? What does the Bible say about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just work on the basis that love your neighbour as yourself, and whatever you do, try and do that. Money is a root of evil, but it's not the sole root of evil. Mm-hmm. It does motivate. I wouldn't say it doesn't, but I think it's important just to put it into perspective, is that if you love your neighbour as yourself, that makes the difference in the way that you think about life and work. And we'll pick that up later on.
Well, we're gonna take a short break, and then we will pick up in a bit. So thank you very much, guys. Hello and welcome back, everybody. Good to have you all back again. So we're gonna kick off the second half with a quiz, as we usually do. In fact, Quizmaster Johnny in Dictionary Corner, we're gonna go to you on this one. But the question is, which I've set people, is which of these jobs was not invented or popularized by the church? And so what jobs did we offer, and what was the order people sort of voted for? Go for it, Johnny.
Okay, so we had 4 options of which job was not invented by the church. So we've got university professor, computer scientist, social worker, and geneticist.
Not necessarily jobs you would associate with the church, I think it's fair to say.
Not really,
no. Hence, that's why I chose them. Okay, so which voted the least?
It was a 3-way split, actually, for the least.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. So we've got university professor, computer scientist, and geneticist. We had, each had 17%.
Right. And then, therefore, social worker.
Yeah, social worker was the most popular answer, with 50%.
Okay, interesting. Well, I'll quickly run through the answers. So, university professor. The church established many of the first modern universities in Europe. So, Paris, Oxford, Bologna. So, actually, the church had a hand in creating that profession. So that was not the right answer. Geneticist. Not necessarily something, again, you would associate with the church, but a guy called Gregor Mendel was an Augustinian is what I'm trying to say there, monk, and he's recognised as the father of genetics. So he sort of created that. So we'll give the church that one, I think. Social worker, which is one we got the most votes for. That was kind of created by monasteries and later organisations like Salvation Army. They sort of created that kind of formalised type of job. So actually, the one that wasn't created by the church was computer scientist, which I think is probably not necessarily surprising. But a guy called Charles Babbage is kind of, he's the guy who was attributed as initially doing the first general purpose computer in the early 19th century. He was a Protestant, so he had a faith, but I don't think we can necessarily say that the church was involved in creating computer science. He just was involved in some way or another. So well done if you went for computer scientist. But we also had a question from the audience during halftime, which I think is worth us addressing now, which is, why did the church dislike acting so much? Johnny, what did Google AI say on that one?
It seems like there were quite a few reasons, but mostly due to its deep entanglement with pagan worship, its reputation for extreme immorality, and the Christian belief that acting was a form of deception, which contradicted the truth.
It's good to know things haven't changed.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So acting was maybe not quite as we now foresee it as a career choice. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know. Okay, right. So far, we have concluded that the Bible wants us to work, and that it's a good thing, and that we should work hard and skillfully, but that working solely for the desire to have more things, more money, is not encouraged. But I don't think we've answered the question of why we should work fully yet. And I want to know if believing in the Bible, actually being a Christian, can help you in your work life as well. So that's kind of where we're going to go now. We have looked at the Old Testament quite a lot, but I'd be interested to know, we've talked about Jesus as far as he did a job, but what did he actually teach about work? Was there anything that was actually relevant to work that he talked about? So, Steve, I'm going to go to you first on this one. What did he talk about work at all in any way?
He did, and if we figure that work then equals income, wealth, status, power, and all of those sort of things, which often in our minds we go to when we think about work. He's talked about it an awful lot. You know, there's I think it's a quote that at least a third of the stories, the parables that he told, involved wealth and effort and what you do about it. And so he understands what drives us, what drives human nature, and there's lots of cases in those stories that we as people are the ones that look at the superficial. You know, what does our work get us in terms of wealth and status and power and kudos and all that sort of stuff? And Jesus very quickly strips that away and is interested in what's going on in the person's heart. You know, the trappings aren't the key thing. It's about what the person is about, what their values are, where their heart is, and that's the thing that bothers him most. And that ties into what we do in terms of our work.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. And does he provide any illustrations that we can come to mind that would sort of show where our heart should be at?
Yeah, so one of those stories, and maybe it's one that people have heard about, is when Jesus taught a parable, a story about sheep and goats, which seems a strange one, but we have to throw our minds back and understand that actually at that point when he was telling the stories, the sheep and goats looked a lot alike. And there's a story about the sheep and goats being separated. and it's an analogy of God's kingdom and people, in a sense, being separated out to the left and right. And one group have done well and the other group have done badly in those sort of choices about where their hearts are. And the ones that have done badly don't really understand where they've done badly because they haven't kind of recognised where the need has been.
I'm assuming the ones that have done badly are the goats, because usually they get the bad rep, don't they? Is that
And then
right?
the ones that have done well have understood at the heart level what matters. And basically, all the confusion at the end, Jesus, what do you mean? What are you talking about? And he says, well, the ones that cared about the poor, the ones that visited the prisoner, the ones that looked after the sick,
Yeah.
they weren't doing it because of the money or the kudos or anything else like that. They were doing it because of the heart motivation. And I can see those. Even if the rest of the world can't see the difference between the sheep and goats, I can see the ones whose hearts are driven by the right reasons for putting the work in, quietly, unnoticed, but the reward, Jesus sees that. And so he illustrates that whole heart level picture. That's one of the illustrations and ways he unpacks that.
So he mentions something along the lines of, what you did for the least of these people, you did for me, kind of thing, right? And then the people who the goats, who maybe didn't do it, say, well, what do you mean I didn't do it for you? And he's saying, well, if you didn't do it for the least of the people, then you didn't do it for me either, right?
That's right. And so it's about that heart attitude, and it's, in a sense, the value of Christ to those people. He's saying, actually, yeah, absolutely. You can say one thing, with your lips and everything else about, loving Jesus and wanting to serve him, but actually, the rubber hits the road in how you look after other people who actually need it. It's not just about the showmanship of it. It's about the actual service and the heart about that.
So, okay, Rick, I'd be interested to hear from you then. So we've got these sort of teachings to say that we should be caring for the poor and lots of other things involved. How did the church take that and run with it? What has the church done to sort of reflect these teachings? Is it? I would hope that these sort of things that you would associate with the church, but is that a fair summary?
Yeah, it is a fair summary where the heart was right, and I think that emphasis is on where the heart was right. The church was instrumental in the abolition of slavery, but it was also interested in the continuation of slavery because there was money to be made.
Uh-huh.
But ultimately, the morality of slavery was deemed to be just totally wrong, and it was down to Christians pushing that through. But it's throughout all the centuries. The Quakers, a Christian group, were actively involved in making sure that the workers that worked for them lived okay. And we're just next door to Bourneville, founded by the Cadburys, and that typifies the care and concern that the employer had for their employees. And they were Christian. But it's interesting, we live in Britain that is deemed to be a welfare state, and that welfare state was founded on the backs of people in the 1940s, really, one of whom was the Archbishop of Canterbury, a guy called William Temple. And how he described the church was that the church is the only society that exists for the benefit of those who are not its members. And to me, that's really important.
So we're saying that the church as a organisation has been set up and created to benefit those outside of the building, outside in the big society that we're in, trying to influence and change and to improve that society.
Yeah, very much so. And one of the leading lights in the 18th century was John Wesley, who founded the Methodist Church. And he lived by the very simple thing: do all the good you can, by all the means you can, in all the ways you can, in all the places you can, at all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can. And that's pretty amazing. And he certainly lived that sort of life. And you can go up to his museum up in London and see what he did. He travelled sort of 250,000 miles on horseback in his lifetime.
Wow.
And preached all over the country and all over. He went to the States as well. So he really was quite instrumental in making sure that Christians did what Jesus told them to do.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly appreciate the things like the order of the very different monks as well throughout society, throughout the thousands of years that those have been existing. They led on healthcare and setting up hospitals and nursing.
It's called the Red Cross, you know.
Yeah, all those, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so significantly involved in a lot of these things. Okay, and in fact, I mean, did we see that actually happening in the early church, Steve? Was there any? You know, we've got in the Bible, we have the Jesus' teachings, but we also do have a few of the sort of letters and various different books that sort of describe how the early church was set up. Was this the sort of thing they would wrestle with as well?
They did, and just as we do, because we you know, it's great, and we've talked at length about, you know, helping others and everything else like that. But if everybody was a social worker, we'd be a bit stuck, wouldn't we? We still need things to be built and IT to be done and creativity things to happen and all those careers. And so we have to be careful that we don't end up just saying the solution is that everybody's professionally a helping person. And the church faced exactly that sort of question. And so we see early on in the book of Acts in chapter 6, you've got the church forming. And once you come together, whether it's a church or any sort of group of people, you start to realise some people have got resources and some people haven't. And you've got the question about how do you be fair to people while also making sure that all the good things that you want to be doing are done, you know, all the other types of work and everything else like that. So very early on, you've got a sense of, I suppose, specialisation kicking in. In that case, it was driven by kind of a falling out that the Hebrewic Jews and the Hellenistic Jews, it's, you know, all within the church, but two kind of people groups,
two different types of groups.
Yeah,
people.
Well, yeah. Some were getting looked after, others weren't, basically.
Okay.
And so the disciples, the leaders, said, okay, what we need to do is find the right people to help the right people who really need it, so that the whole church isn't completely distracted by the one thing. And so there's a guy called Stephen and a group of 6 others, so there's 7 in total, who brought together and say, okay, you guys order and manage how we're going to look after the people who really need it. So the widows, the orphans, the people who are really in a position not to be able to work. So it's not an excuse not to work, but it's those who genuinely need it. How does the church wrap around those? And so set aside the right people with the right values, the right skills to look after them, so the whole church as a body functions in all the different ways it should do. So, you know, is that the start of, you know, social work? And those were our first social workers. It's that kind of theme, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to see that even in that early church, we were starting to see them living out in that way. And the church, I think, has changed in many different ways over the thousands of years. And in fact, we have discussed some of that already. But I do feel like that ethos is still very much, or should still be very much, part of any church in any community. Okay, I want to move on a little bit to sort of understand from you guys how faith and the Bible and Christianity has led to you making decisions within your own careers, and whether it has influenced in some way what you guys have been doing. I mean, if you say it hasn't, then this is going to be a short podcast, but we'll see. Hopefully, it has led to in some way some changes. So, Rick, I'm going to go with you first. Your story, you mentioned the fact that you became a Christian, so presumably that's not when you first started your career, you weren't necessarily a Christian. You then came to a point where you gained a faith, and so how did that influence your career post becoming a Christian?
I can say I was a complete atheist before I became a Christian, so there's
right.
No, it was definitely a different level. Becoming a Christian changed the way that I thought about others. And realised that certainly the people that worked under me, I would do all I could to help them move on, not to get rid of them. Gosh, I'll rephrase that maybe, but just to help them live their lives. But I can remember when I became a Christian, I'd take teams on team building days, and we used to pack goods to go out to Rwanda, which was through a local church, and it didn't matter. They got involved because they valued taking part. or going into a school and decorating it. It was getting them involved. But I have to say my career changed because I was prepared to do something different. And I won't say it meant that it certainly levelled off for some while, because I chose not to do what was going on and really sort of try and get all the way up the ladder in the civil service. I just chose to stay where I was to some extent. But what I did in doing so, I ended up doing some fantastic jobs outside the civil service. And when it came to it, those additional experiences meant that I was able to move up in the civil service anyway, because so few other people actually had the skills that I was able to demonstrate. That made a significant difference in what I got up to.
Okay, so your view about you weren't necessarily just wanting to progress for progression's sake. You sort of diversified your career, went down routes that were maybe not traditional. Your colleagues may have gone for like the manager jobs and gone up the ladder, and you were looking to sort of try and bring in other experiences, other sort of deliverables into what you were doing outside of the I guess the standard stuff you talked about.
Different skills, different competencies as they were called, and it enabled me to sort of go for jobs, and I would know that I was going to give examples that very few others would be able to give.
Yeah.
And that was more memorable to an interview panel or an application form.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, okay. And I guess a diverse, interesting set of experiences along the way. Steve, did you find that your career path was maybe different than a traditional one because of your faith, or did you follow a traditional path but sort of we've got it on that route? How did that look for you?
Well, you have to go back quite a while. So
we talked
about vision earlier, and so what sows the seed in somebody's life to kind of decide what they're going to do and how it all works out. And so for me, literally as an 11-year-old, my family moved into the centre of Birmingham, and our house was next to a church, and because of the position, it meant that to my mind, at my eyes, as a kind of 11-year-old and a teenager, homeless men, tramps, literally in a sense, in terms of my mind at that point, would knock on the door and say, "Can I have a cup of tea and a sandwich?"
Right, and because you're close to a church, the building that you're in is
it was the vicarage, and so people identified it as a place to get help,
which is good because we've just been talking about
we have
church being
so it's a case in point.
So, yeah, good.
And so that young lad's mind, it was kind of like, well, who are these people and what's happened and why are they in this situation and who's doing something about it? And so fast forwards, he's gone off to university, he's got his degree, and Marks and Spencer's have offered him a store management traineeship job, and he decides...
Other supermarkets are available.
Indeed. Does he want to do that for the rest of his life? Or actually, is there a bigger adventure and a bigger question to answer? And the bigger question, in a sense, was, who are these people? Why are they here? And what can I do about it? That feeling of responsibility and that values sort of sense. But also a sense of, so what's the adventure? So my first job was deputy manager of 2 homeless hostels on downtown Skid Row in Los Angeles. I lived in a homeless hostel and was manager of those for a couple of years. And then I worked in night shelters and homeless centres and rough sleeping outreach and built hostels and managed them and all the other things across that, and always trying to make a career decision about who is it I can help and how can I have the most effect with the hours that I'm given in terms of work. And I benefited from that a little bit, like Rick was saying. It creates a different story, not one that's just like I'm driven by the promotion or the money or the very specific career path. It's just that actually this is my passion, this is my vision, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life, and so therefore I will keep doing it to my absolute best ability. And so that's played out. And then you asked at the beginning about the British Empire Medal or British Excellence Medal, I think we can call it as well. I think we're allowed to do that. And there's a story in the Bible about Queen Esther, and there's an often quoted phrase about being here at the right time, the right place, such as a time as this. And so I started working for Birmingham City Council in February 2020, and within 2 or 3 weeks, COVID had hit. And panic was on. We've got to get everybody who's homeless and rough sleeping into accommodation. And because I'd worked in the field for 20, 25 years, and I knew people, and I had trust, and I had confidence at that moment, that it just happened that was the moment I started working at Birmingham City Council. That pandemic hit, and I had some of the things to do and some of the answers and a bit of leadership with it. And so we got everybody in. We opened extra hotels, we closed shared sleeping spaces and all sorts of other things, and it was a really successful period. And so I got a medal for that.
Yeah, well done you. And so it sounds very much like for your career, having that vision and that purpose was one of those things that sort of has led to an overarching story to where you're now at, because you've developed those skills. So that's, I guess that you might attribute that to your faith and to your journey with God, and sort of exploring what that vision is and then applying that to your life.
That's right. I suppose it's that question about who do you work for?
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Bible's clear. You should do right by your employer and be trustworthy and good and everything else like that. But as a Christian, you've got a higher boss as well, and that's God, and you want to serve your Heavenly Father well and do right by that. And there are certainly times in my career where I felt like I've become institutionalized, probably is the best way to put it. You get stuck in the routine, stuck in the I need the money will come in each month and everything else like that, and doing something different is too difficult or too risky. And sometimes God just needs to shake the nest, and you need to kind of allow yourself to fall out of that and take that risk with what's next, what's going to what's the new thing that I'm called to do. And again, that doesn't have to just be about helping people in homelessness and social work. I think in any field these principles still apply to.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it sounds for both of you like having a different focus, so not having the how much money can I earn as the top priority, how far can I get and how high can I get in my career as the top priority, is giving you the freedom to think a little bit more about what is the direction, what is the value that I'm bringing here, and move with that as the key focus, maybe more than the money sort of thing. Which I guess for a lot of people can become the be all and end all. But I guess also it's probably worth saying at this point that I assume, as far as all the sort of teachings that we've had from the Bible today and the sort of principles and learnings that we've got, these are not just for people who are getting paid. This is for anybody within any work or position, whether that's paid or unpaid. Is that right?
Yeah, I think that's right. And we use it in an illustration because in homelessness, lots of people want to help the homeless, and whether it be businesses who want to come and paint the walls of day centres, or people who want to give out sandwiches and things like that. That's wonderful, but is it the best use of your skills and resources and everything else like that? If you're a group of good lawyers, then why don't you help people on the legal front rather than paint walls? And it's those sort of things. And so we often use the illustration in terms of, you probably heard the kind of the phrase, everybody's a paycheck away from homelessness. Actually, that's not really true. Most people aren't a paycheck away from homelessness, but there are vulnerable people that are, and so we have to understand that. So if you imagine the stool that I'm sat on at the moment with its 4 legs, and each of those 4 legs is keeping me safe and stable. And so those 4 legs, in terms of me not being homeless, having a home and having security of tenure, having protection to be able to live there is one of those stable legs. Having good physical and mental health is one of those things that brings me stability and safety and protects me from homelessness. Having a job, work, and pay that, and protection around that. That keeps me stable and safe as well. And then the final leg is having friends and community, because I know that if I suddenly had to leave my house, I've got people. I've got Luke, my mountain biking buddy, who I can say, Luke, have you got a spare room? I've got people who I can go to, a community around me. It's the people who lose those legs, that lose that stability in their lives. And so you might be a doctor, you might be somebody who's helping people with their finances and banking, you might be somebody who's building good communities. All of those things are just as valuable as what I do in terms of helping people protect them from homelessness. It's just not quite as directly. And so, as I say, everything can be for good and can be building community and building resilience in terms of for the most vulnerable particularly.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense to me. We don't want lopsided chairs.
We don't.
Indeed. I think it'd be good to finish off on sort of some of your learnings that you've had over the years from both of you. Where the advice that you would give your younger friends, such as myself, as to the things that you could do. I don't take advice from my father-in-law, just for obviously that's that. So this is. But we'll start off with you, Rick. I suppose.
All right.
What would you say to people who are in the work environment, and you've gone through this your career? What sort of top tips would you give, either biblical or otherwise?
Well, I've chosen 7. Now, I believe that's a lucky number in the Bible. But anyway, we won't go there. So that was the sort of big biblical sort of link. But the first one is most important. Treat others as you would be expected to be treated yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hack people off, because you never know when it's going to come back and bite you.
Fair.
Don't backstab. Be honest, open and fair. Show gratitude and encouragement. Do what you can to support others to fulfill their potential and live their lives to the full. And if you're in work, use your volunteer days.
Yeah, good.
And finally, thank God each day for what's happened.
I like it. All right, there's lots of good wisdom there, Rick. I may not ignore those pieces of advice. I will try and take them on board.
Okay.
You can remind me in coming days and weeks when you ask me to volunteer for the next thing.
That's right. Which reminds me.
Don't get me on record for this.
No, it's okay.
Ask me later. Steve, is there any sort of things that you would like to sort of pull up on and highlight?
Sure. I think they are themes that we've talked about. And so having, I think, at least an idea of who you are and what drives you. I'm not kind of like, saying, absolutely, work can be wonderful every day and it can be fun, because I think work also needs to be a challenge at times as well. But actually, who you are and what are you made for? Find that vision for yourself, and actually then other things follow. And if you're in the right place at the right time, it can go well. It can be blessed. And I've just been amazed by trying to do the right thing on a daily basis, that the big things also then fall into place as well. And I mentioned that word earlier in terms of legacy, and there is a sense in which early in my career it was a word that was quite often mentioned to me. Okay, so what's the fruit of this? What's going to be there at the end? And so at this stage of my career, it's kind of like, well, I can see some of those things now, but actually what's finishing well also look like in terms of what you leave behind in terms of a legacy from whatever thousands of hours it works out that you work over that career.
Yeah. What is your legacy? It's that's one to mull over, isn't it? Brilliant. Okay. Well, look, guys, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. So we've covered off what the Bible says. We've covered off what you guys think and your experiences. So we think you can kind of conclude on, effectively, you need to work hard. I think that's definitely in the Bible, one way or another. Work for the benefit of other people along the way, and for the community that you're in. Work skillfully and work for a purpose, and have an idea around the legacy that you would like to lead. leave. Some amazing advice. Thank you very much for your
But
time.
have fun along the way as well.
Yeah, good
We
point.
start with a creative and wonderful, entertaining and brilliant God as well, and
Yeah.
that's in us as well.
Yeah.
It's not all Puritan work ethic, is it?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I like that. That's not in the Proverbs as much as it should be. I
No, Song of Solomon's, the next one along's got a bit more of
That's
that in it,
more
hasn't
about
it?
fun of sorts. Yes, indeed. Yeah, we cover off everything's in the Bible one way or another.
In one way or another.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, to finish off, I'm going to finish with a Clementine liturgy, which I found, which is the oldest complete written Eucharist rite. Easy for me to say. Which is basically like it's spoken during communion, which is part of the Christian service. So this was found in a 4th century book. So we've had a few 3rd and 4th century pieces of literature and stuff here now. So here we go. So. Blessed are you, O Lord, who has nourished me from my youth up, who gives food to all flesh. Fill our hearts with joy and gladness, that we, always having all sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work in Christ Jesus our Lord, through whom to you be glory, honour, might, majesty, and dominion, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Good stuff. Right, well, that is us done for tonight. Do please rate and subscribe to our podcast platforms. Our next session is going to be called Restless to Rested, all about rest, and with Ruth. But thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you again soon.